Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Mosry and Kira Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more.
Welcome to the CRM Success Show, where we deep dive into CRM success and failure, delivering real stories with real impact. Today, we're talking with Andy Vays and Nilam Patel, both from Rent. Andy is the Director of Enterprise Applications, and Nilam Patel is a Senior Engineering Manager. So welcome, Andy and Nilam.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to start off real simple for our listeners today. Nilam, ladies first, we'll start with you. Could you first both tell us a little bit about your roles first, and then we'll circle into what the company actually do. Nilam, over to you.
Yeah, so I lead the enterprise applications team at Rent, which is our business operations teams across the organization. Our key stakeholders are our sales operations, client experience, marketing, billing, finance, collections, anything that helps run the company. They are ultimately my team's business partners. We manage and support all the business processes that we built within our Salesforce platform, and in addition to any of the legacy applications that we also still support and maintain.
Fantastic. Andy?
Yeah, awesome. So I head up the enterprise applications team here at Rent, and we really focus on the lead to order to cash lifecycle. And so obviously CRM, Salesforce, and everything around it is a big part of our group here. Recently just acquired the DNA team as well as part of our group. So we're kind of coming full circle in terms of building that 360-degree lens of our customer. But yeah, that's our purview here in the enterprise applications group.
Fantastic. And Rent as a business, my understanding is it's essentially I guess like an online marketplace connecting renters with properties. That's a super simplified version, I guess, of what it does. But Andy, do you want to, maybe Nilam, because you've been there a lot longer, do you want to shed some light on kind of what else Rent do?
Digital marketing for advertising, rentals, and apartments. We have a couple of websites. Our flagships are rent.com and apartmentguide.com. And so those are the two sites that we do operate off of for the most part. We are a subsidiary of Redfin most recently. What else? What else would you like to know?
What about, I was reading, you offer kind of communication platform of some form, like to help property managers and tenants?
Yeah, we're a full service solution for our property managers and clients. And so we have products that help answer phone calls and live chats. And our goal is ultimately to help our clients fill their leases. And so in addition to being a marketing agency and being an ILS, which is a listing service for rentals, we also offer other solutions leveraging cool technologies like LLMs to streamline the management process and sort of the intake of potential renters for our clients, which are usually property management companies as well.
Nice. And to give an idea of scale, like roughly how many properties or renters do, rent.com kind of support and provide for? Andy?
Yeah, Neil, you're going to have to help me a little bit in this one. I know we have about 40 million unique users a year that visit rent.com, but that's just rent.com. We're owned by Redfin, and so we really have a bigger footprint than that. I think we have actives a little over 10,000 property management companies, wow. Nilam. Does that sound right to you?
We have about 19 to 20K properties. So, yeah.
All US based or North America as a whole?
North America as a whole. Well, US based.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Just so your users that better understand, we really focus on property management companies. So not the individual owner that just rents their home to a potential renter, but these are companies that manage multifamily buildings, very often more than just one as well.
Perfect. Okay. So from a Salesforce perspective, where did that journey start for Rent when it comes to Salesforce? Nilam, you want to pick that up?
That journey started a long, long time ago. so probably around this time that I even joined the company, they had purchased the Salesforce platform. Not very many people were aware of the platform. It was still kind of shiny, and it's a shiny new toy, right, for engineers and technology folks. Over time, we developed on it, we configured it, we did a lot of custom coding, all of which were all learnings that we learned in the last couple of years that they weren't the best ways of implementing using Salesforce. And so we unraveled that just a bit with our Service Cloud project that we'll probably get into more details in a few minutes.
Perfect. And again, for our listeners, I know you mentioned for as long as you were there, just for context, that's about 14, 15 years, correct? So around 2011, 2010, 2011.
Yep.
And then basically what I'm hearing is a couple of years, the last couple of years, you start to see the ROI out of Salesforce, and that times up quite nicely when Andy joined the business. So I wonder if that's just a coincidence. Basically, you brought Andy in and everything's great.
Andy came in to help everything become great. So yes.
Awesome. All right.
And I think maybe I'll just add to that slightly. We implemented again in 2011, and I think we at a point we were really great. Like we were top of the line. Salesforce was driving Rent's business, which was actually larger maybe a decade ago than it is today. And so it was a huge part of that growth story. I think what happened over time is that initial implementation became a little bit stale, a little bit outdated. And wasn't really taking advantage of some of the newer features that Salesforce has released over time. And so what we've kind of done here is try to rejuvenate it and bring out some of that potential in the platform, or that maybe we didn't have from the decade of its existence.
Mm-hmm. So before we go into Service Cloud specifically, which Maz will pick up on in a little bit more detail, in its most simplistic form, how are Rent using Salesforce, or how were they using Salesforce prior to the kind of the Service Cloud project we're going to talk about? What was it used for? Was it simply to help sales professionals canvas and prospect to more landlord owners? Was it more inbound than that? What was it used for?
Is that to me?
Sorry, Nilam.
It was mainly for intaking customer requests. We used it for contracting. We also used we developed custom code to help support our billing and fulfillment needs for the contracts that were processed. We used it for integration with other platforms. But it was all very much of a reactive model of how we did implementation versus thinking through what Salesforce and the platform it can offer, and really thinking about all the features and the bells and the whistles that would help the business grow, and we can help scale and maintain the growth of it.
Cool. So you guys mentioned that some of the stuff, I guess, that was operating really well in the 2011 timeframe, and then kind of went a little bit stale. Is that just simply because Salesforce, I guess it was around that time, maybe a couple years later, that they really started ramping up their investment and modernizing? Lightning, I don't think came until even later than that. What, 2016?
2016, yeah.
Or so, right? So was it just a function of the entire market or Salesforce is moving and you guys just didn't catch up or keep up? Or was the business environment changing? What caused it to go stale?
I think a little bit of both of what you just mentioned, Dave. Business growth, Salesforce itself, we didn't pick up on the new features right away. Our landscape, the business model didn't change, but the way we ran business was run differently. We had leadership changes along the way. So it was a variety of factors that we just didn't touch it for quite some time. I can't even say years. I just want to say some time.
Cool. And you guys, I would say at your core, and correct me if this is probably a bad assessment or if it is a wrong assessment, like you're really a marketing company, right? You're helping renters, right, do their marketing to find tenants. So any of that expertise like goes back into marketing your services, and like was that done outside of Salesforce? How did that like drive your process that you guys have this kind of, let's say, industry knowledge or expertise?
I think that evolved over time, Neelam, right? I mean, I know you were here through a tenure. We used to just be an ILS, which is an internet
Yep.
listing service. So we were primarily just one of the premier spots on the internet you would go to if you wanted to find an apartment. A lot of those ancillary marketing services that we do today, like TikTok and social and search and engage and all those other products that make us kind of a full suite marketing solution for PMCs, that was part of maybe the evolution in the last 3 or 4 years. And that also really is a big part of what spurred some of the changes we've had to make in the platform to support these different channels and products and services and fulfilling them and onboarding clients and everything that kind of goes along with it. So definitely, that was definitely a big part of it. Along with, you don't break what's working, because it was working for us for a very long time until some of these changes came about.
Okay, cool. So that I think goes right into the Service Cloud project, right? So now you guys are expanding your offerings, a lot more products, and I know for a fact this caused, I think, like you started having more complicated onboarding processes, right? And that's part of what Service Cloud came in. I know that wasn't all of it. So yeah, why don't you tell us more about, right, the decision to go with Service Cloud? Was it being used before at all, and you just kind of expanded on it? Or was this like a full-blown initiative? Yeah, give us the backstory.
Andy, you want this one?
Yeah, either one of you guys, whoever knows more, better.
Go for it.
Well, Service Cloud, we always had Service Cloud. That wasn't a thing that we purchased. We always had it. We just didn't implement it or use it in the most powerful way it could give us. And so what I mean by that is we didn't have case management rules. We didn't have case routing. We didn't have skills-based. We didn't have any of the standard bells and features that Service Cloud would offer, that does offer, right? And so the way we supported our clients when they submitted issues or anybody submitted a request, the customer service support model was more of a reactive. We had a first in, first out concept. Cases didn't get routed automatically to anyone. They went to the first person that was available, whether it was the right person or the right team, whether they knew about it or not. And if they didn't, they would have to escalate it or hold it until they could find someone to help resolve the issue. Case close times were ridiculously long, not for the lack of trying, they were just long. We had potential revenue losses because clients could have been asking us for some more information on certain products, but we didn't have it. We didn't know the case existed until we got to it, right? And then we lacked visibility to critical issues that were being reported because we weren't tracking it the right way. We weren't tracking it in any way. We were being very reactive, and we've got a case come in, we've got an issue, we're looking to solve for it, and that's it. It was a start and finish, but nothing in between of trying to figure out what could be causing all the cases that come in. And so that's kind of the initial reason of why we started the Service Cloud project. It was essentially a revamp, overhaul. Let's tear everything down and start from the foundation up.
I would just maybe add to that a little bit and say, I remember when I first joined, we were actually looking at like alternative platforms. And if you work with me or know me long enough, you'll hear me say Salesforce probably isn't the best service solution on the market. It's probably not the best CPQ solution on the market, but it is truly the best customer platform on the market that kind of can touch every part of that customer lifecycle and be able to bring that all together to create a seamless experience through the entire client journey and life cycle. And that's, I think, ultimately why the business and us doubled down on investing in Salesforce and going through that Service Cloud transformation, because it was core to our ecosystem, core to our infrastructure. We built a lot there, and that transformation really helped us get so much more out of it. Whereas going to another solution for service would have just been, a massive project with not nearly the same ROI that we've gotten, that we've been able to get with what we've done here.
So how do you go about tackling your project to this size, right? Because you're saying you got to divide up your service into teams based on skills, figure out how you're going to route it. Maybe you don't have, maybe did, I don't know, have the case history to know what are the cases that you need the skills for. Right? right? So how did you guys decide to tackle this? I know you said in the wraparound you go to hybrid. I think is that what you did here?
We actually took the data that we did have with the current cases and exported them. We sat down with our business partners and we analyzed the data. We looked at the type of cases that were coming in using any field that we had possibly that we were recording, along with any follow-up notes. And from that, we derived a case management process that says, here's the type of case and here are the possible reasons and sub-reasons that this case could follow under. And with that, we derived a case management kind of hierarchy. And then from there, we went and started building out, okay, well, here's the case hierarchy. Here are all the things that could fall into this bucket of work. And here are all the people that can work this. So this is where you start implementing case routing, case skills-based management with individuals on the team. You can assign their skills in Salesforce, right, in omnichannel, so that we know which user can answer this case on a first touch resolution. One of our goals, and we identified a couple of goals. We need to have a really good, exceptional customer service experience. That's what really sets apart most companies these days, is when they have a fantastic client experience. And then the second is how do we increase or decrease the amount of time that we can start and finish and close a case for a client in the least amount of transitions to other teams or other individuals within the same team. And so first close case touch resolution. And so we had some goals in mind that we wanted to set out and accomplish. And with the revamp of everything, I think we had a really good start by just exporting the data that we had first, reviewing it, analyzing, dissecting it down. That alone was, I think, 1 to 2 months of work. And that's really working with the business partners. They're the key to making it to be successful. They were the key stakeholders.
Awesome.
Chime in really quickly. You asked a question earlier about methodology. That was the beauty of the agile process. Nilam and her team really engaged with our stakeholders, did that upfront discovery, mapped out what our future state needs to look like, mapped out our current state, future state, understood the journey there. But as she implemented it, it was iterative and it was really working together with the business to fine tune things. And I think that was critical to the success of that initiative and project.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to point out, it's really, really smart using pick list type fields or lookup fields as opposed to free text. It's one of the biggest mistakes in case management. To lots of text because you need notes. It's a case, but very difficult to report on if you don't have proper classifications, and almost better to have I'll say not perfect classifications, but classified in some level than not. And that leads into my next question. Andy, we'll hop over to you. So now you guys are, I guess, positioned to grow, expanding your product bases, right? How much do you think of service when launching a product? Like, do you now think through the whole service process at the forefront of a new product launch, or is that still an afterthought? Wait till they get the data, then.
No, we have a framework, right? Like that was something that Nilam did, is she created a framework that really wraps around our products and services. And so when we have a new product that comes to life, it plugs into our framework. We have the questions we need to ask. We know how we need to configure that particular case's workflows, what the milestones need to look like for it. And sort of it fits into an architecture that was developed that accommodates any new additional ask in the future.
But how well can you predict what cases are going to come in?
Well, you never know what type of case is going to come in, I guess, right? Like, so you have the nuances and you build your case management in a way to accommodate structured things that you know how they're going to kind of flow, and where you can kind of even develop automated solutions to resolve them without having to go and spend time and leverage things like knowledge to deflect cases as they come in to help our users. And if we do get a case or that's new or we can't solve for it, we have workflows in place that gets it to the right person that can either triage it or resolve it themselves.
When it comes to the case management review, you mentioned business partners. Again, just for context, like who were the business partners for this program, Andy? Who did that consist of? Was it customer service people themselves? Like, were they actively involved in helping to shape the as is to be, or was it leadership?
It started at the leadership level, right? So we started with getting buy-in at the leadership level, mapping out the journeys that go around all the different case workflows, and they invited the folks that are their leaders on their team. And so, you can definitely chime in here, but as we were going through that discovery process, we really included the leaders, the folks underneath them, and then individual contributors on their team that really knew particular areas. We collectively worked together to kind of map out the understood processes at that time that we needed to be able to support. And so it was really customer service, it was onboarding, it was billing, collections. So we really touched on every part of the business that ultimately leverages Salesforce today, which is every aspect of our company, quite honestly. Everything kind of flows through the platform here on the Rent side.
And then you mentioned Service Cloud. Your words, not mine. Maybe isn't the best service. Salesforce isn't the best service product. Always curious, as although we focus almost 90% on Salesforce, we do cover other CRMs and products. What else was a consideration, even if it was briefly?
Yeah, I mean, ServiceNow is always like the first one that comes to mind. That's the big player in the space, but obviously it didn't quite fit with the rest of our stack. There are other solutions out there by Atlassian and other products that also work really well depending on what you're looking for in terms of scale. But again, it was more than service. It was about building a pipeline and accommodating our customers' journey as they walk through their life cycle with us. And so to take one piece of that and move it to another platform and have it integrate back just didn't make sense. And so that's ultimately why we landed on Service Cloud.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
interesting you mentioned ServiceNow, because I think, 3 days ago, they mentioned they're getting in the CRM market. Watch out, Salesforce.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kira.
Time will tell. Maybe a collaboration or partnership coming there at some point. Who knows?
Are you guys allowed to say that?
We can say what we want. Are you kidding?
In terms of
It is no filter here. We don't answer
real
to nobody,
authenticity.
in case that's not.
In terms of like, so you talked about like kind of KPIs, Nilam, in terms of, trying to be, you didn't say world class, but you said, improve obviously service and make that where it should be in terms of a business like Rent. What you would expect as maybe a consumer of services, you'd expect, cases to be answered quickly, efficiently, the best person, to be assigned to your case, and case history and so on, right? They're all basics you would expect when any of us deal with a company, right? In today's tech market. So could you elaborate on specific KPIs, right? Like, okay, you don't have a lot of KPIs to compare to, you just know things aren't great. We're going to do Service Cloud again. Were there any kind of metrics that you'd set out as a project team to say, okay, we want to reduce the days to close a case by X amount of times? Any nitty gritty?
We didn't. So beforehand, we didn't have anything to measure against, right? So we didn't really have a baseline. Our baseline was this project, and we could only get better from there. So I mean, today, if we were to go back in time and look at cases that were open, there were cases out there that were open for over 20, 40 plus days at a time, and nobody had touched it. It was still sitting in a status of not touched, right? That's just poor experience. I mean, we can't have a client wait that many days to have someone reach out to them, right? But if you go look at our case queue today, you will not probably see more than maybe 5 cases not touched, but not in a day, maybe within the hour. That's because we have cases that are just constantly being routed to the right people, to the right teams. They don't all go to one single drop point. They actually get auto routed based off of everything that we're getting from the client, from the internal user. And so that alone I think was a big win for us to see that we don't have cases in our queue that haven't been touched by a single person yet. Within one business day, you can see things are moving and progressing along for most all cases, if not all.
I think just a massive time save, not only obviously for the customers, but even internally, asking, where are we at with this? Where are we at with X, Y, Z? You could just see it all in real time, moving along the right channels. So, but you had the product before, right? It's not a new product. So it was just again, like I'm trying to understand, like why not sooner? Like why?
It was definitely a miss. I think there was a lack of knowledge on how best to implement using Service Cloud when we first purchased the platform. I just don't think it was done correctly, or we didn't think through enough at the time. And back then, I had never even used Salesforce 14 plus years ago. And so everything I know now is everything I've learned over time on my own through experiences, whether it be a win or a loss. And so as we evolved as a company, as individuals on our team evolved and learning the platform itself and how we use it, I think we all learned that this wasn't right. We could do better, and we can do better. It was a matter of pulling the plug and having someone help us pull that plug and bring some confidence in the fact that we can get it done. And I think that's when Andy came in. When he joined the company, he brought a level of confidence to our stakeholders that they just didn't have for us yet. And we lacked that with working with our partners, I think. And Andy came in and helped us with that. And we were able to convince him, let us break this down and start over. And you'll see the benefits and the return on the investment in doing it.
Bit of short-term pain at the beginning, but benefiting from it long term. All right, so Captain America, Superman. I don't know who your favorite superhero is, Andy. So you take up the reins of the project. Just give us an idea of like the size of this project. So like how many users, licenses, how long did it take? Was it different phases? Did you do it all in a one and done? Was it like a multiple phase rollout? Help us understand the size.
Wolverine. He's my favorite superhero. It's definitely done in phases. We have about 600 users in Salesforce, and that includes both client service, onboarding, sales users in our internal ecosystem. But we all use every feature of it, including the service piece. So every part of the organization ultimately touches it. It was done in definitely phases. There are still even pieces that we're tying together now as we're going through and adding different features. But the big overhaul was getting back to foundations and the fundamental piece. So it was kind of like, let's just re-architect the core of the platform, get our case types and case reasons and our case workflows all cleaned up and ironed out. Let's understand what workflows we need to support that. What does alerting need to look like to function there? We had our internal folks, and we brought in some contractors as well. So we leveraged SIs and brought in an amazing architect, Service Cloud architect, Yulia, who came in and really worked wonders with our team to help arrange stuff. And then we hired our own architect, Joe Moffitt, who's been fantastic here as well. And so we had some really smart people that were hands to the keyboard as well. And we really rolled it out iteratively. It was big bang at first to just kind of flip it over and rebuild the foundations. And then we added different pieces as we went along, including dashboards and reportings that came with CRMA after the fact that really gave the right lenses to the business to understand the impact of some of the stuff. And that was probably one of the more interesting things of the transformation actually is we did a lot of work. You didn't really see the result. You really didn't measure the result. You didn't really know what it was until maybe like 5 or 6 months later when we really started to plug all that data in and start drilling into it and building these robust dashboards. We hired this amazing CRMA expert that came in and did some really cool stuff for us. And that really kind of got the business excited on what else we can do. And so we still tweak to this day, different parts of it to kind of get the most out of it. But that was kind of how we went about it. It was big bang a little bit at first, and then iteratively, feature by feature, building on what we created as a foundation.
And in terms of like additional capabilities within Service Cloud, depending if you go customized or out the box, in terms of features, but was there any like omni-channel routing or like knowledge base, any Einstein in there at the time?
At the time, no, but we implemented everything you just described. Yeah.
Okay, so the project then, if it's still ongoing in phases, we're talking a couple of years, right? This is quite a long-term project with ongoing enhancement still taking place. How'd it go, Nilam?
Good. Yeah.
Great from where I stand.
I think he's asking a little bit more about the journey than the we know the end result is killing.
The end result is great, absolutely. The journey was definitely rough. It was pulling a lot of small band-aids off. If you can imagine, a child saying, I have a boo-boo, and you put a band-aid on it and you make it feel better, and then they come back again 5 minutes later, like, I have another boo-boo, and you put another band-aid. Well, we essentially ripped all the band-aids off all at one time. It did hurt for a little bit while we did it, but over time, it became fruitful to see that it was okay to rip that Band-Aid off and really start from scratch and really use the foundational platform and then build on top of that using the standard features that Salesforce offers.
Cool. Obviously, no implementation is a straight line to success. We all know that. Andy, biggest challenge that either you anticipated or didn't anticipate along the way?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the proverbial saying of changing the wheels on a car while it's driving. I mean, that was probably the biggest challenge, right? We were using the platform day to day actively, and so we didn't want to disrupt business. It was critical to all the revenue that we produce. Service Cloud we didn't just leverage it for just cases. It was also part of our onboarding and fulfillment processes to get clients live, and so a lot and collections and every other piece. And so we needed to preserve the different workflows to support the different parts of the organization while we kind of did these things, and then seamlessly have the two converge and then onboard different groups over time. And that was kind of what stretched it out a little bit, right? Like, it wasn't just like a net new flush and right implementation where you kind of go live and off you go. It was, let's do this core transformation, and then let's start bringing in all these different pieces without disrupting the day-to-day workflows of our business users. So I would say that was the most challenging part of it, just making sure we delivered value while not disrupting our existing workflow and service.
Could you, again, I might be showing some skill set gaps here, my side, knowledge gaps, but could you not build in a different like sandbox and create like a second org in the meantime? Is that what you ended up doing? If so, like limited disruption, not put into production and so on.
So we did have sandboxes. We still do have sandboxes that we did our initial implementation, testing, validations. But then when you have a project of this magnitude where there's a lot of migration that we're going to be working with, when we do go live, we had a cutover. We did it over the weekend where we don't have very many people working. We established a timeline that the platform will not be available to users. We made sure we had the least amount of disruption to our business throughout the migration time, but everything was done in our lower environments, implemented, well documented, thanks to Joe. And anything that we did for the migration and the deployment itself was in production, obviously. I mean, we have to do all that in production at some point.
Yeah, I think the core of Kira's question, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going back to that changing the wheels while you're driving type analogy, right? So if you're developing in a lower environment, doing proper deployments, why is that needed? Is it just because of a phased rollout type thing, trying to get some ROI instead of doing a big bang? Right, that's I think what you were asking, Kira.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
Well, we wanted to do the big bang rollout so that everybody was running against the same case management implementation out of the gate. And then the phased rollout pieces were onboarding other teams into the process so that their teams were getting the cases in their queue in the right way. Also, if there's anybody missing, we know that they're missing. They're not getting any work in their queue. So the big bang was the actual case management part of it, where we derived a plan. We have an architectural schema for it. And then the migration of what it is today to what we want them to see tomorrow was our big bang rollout. So that's something that you would have to do. We did it. We did a migration in our lower environments. Everything looked great, or it didn't. We fixed it, and then we did the full migration in production as the big bang as Andy's describing.
So, could you not like close out cases in the current process and do new cases in the new process, and or something like that? How was your approach for like mid-flight cases?
So any of the cases that we had in flight, they all had a reason, sub-reason. We essentially created multiple fields on the records and identified which ones we were going to flag as X, which ones we were going to flag as Y. And so when we did the migration, we knew which ones were going to go to the new type, reason, sub-reason buckets ahead of time.
And I'll just add one other thing to make things complex for us is we are owned by a public company and we are heavily audited. And a lot of what we had within our platform relates directly back to contracting and dollars. And so every change had to be documented, and we did have some of those challenges we had to walk through. And so we were trying to deliver value. You mentioned this earlier, Dave, value to the business as soon as possible. And that was our goal. And so that's why we carved up the types of cases and the types of different segments of our organization we would support first, right? Get them online, train them, have them adopt the platform before moving on to some of the other parts that are maybe a little more complex and maybe less value, more audit, but harder ultimately for us to kind of pull off. And so that made us be very intentional about who and what groups we service and in what order when we roll things out.
So did you try to move your old cases into your current reporting structure, or did you just like legacy?
Did we? I think we converted the types, right? We closed out a bunch, and
you were able to identify them, so you had enough info.
Yeah, we were able to identify. That's why I said we exported everything we had in flight. Anything that was closed, we closed. That stayed closed. We didn't even bother with the migration. But anything that was still in flight, we sat down with the team, with our stakeholders, and said, okay, which ones do these fall into? Which areas? And then that's how we're going to do the migration moving forward.
That's a good thing you only had 6 open.
Sorry?
I said it's a good thing you only had 6 open at any given time.
Oh, man.
I'm teasing a bit. Okay, so just pivot a little bit to reporting. I think you mentioned the DNA team. What does DNA stand for?
Data analytics.
Right. I knew that.
You're just testing?
So, no, it's for our listeners. So how do you decide on reporting, right? Because obviously for case management, you need real-time reporting. CRM analytics obviously is not. I believe you have some other tools, particularly if you have a whole team called DNA, right? Replication, I know you guys have. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about how that whole thing is kind of built, structured, either business-wise or technically, and maybe some of the decisions there, and was that a afterthought or a forethought?
It was definitely more of an afterthought, right? As it should be, right? Like you shouldn't be building things to report and analyze, right? You should be doing that you should be building it to solve business problems, and then you should have the infrastructure to ingest that data and transform it into a state where you want to do what you want with it, right? And so much like our rest of our organization, our data landscape is old and a little bit archaic and a little bit of spaghetti with a couple of different lakes and warehouses spread across things. We're currently going through a transformation ourselves on that side of the world to consolidate everything ultimately in Snowflake. And so that was ultimately how we kind of approach some of these problems as well. And so while we do some reporting on platform, we really want to do some more in-depth analysis that require data sets that were primarily in Salesforce, but also need to be married to other data sets that live in our organization. So as an example, we use Zuora for billing, and there's data that lives in Zuora that complements some of the data in Salesforce. And we wanted to tie that together to give accurate lenses to our business in terms of how they were doing, what that looked like. And so while some stuff is reported on in the platform, data never leaves it. The vast majority of our reporting we built by syncing Salesforce over to Snowflake and syncing our other data sources over to Snowflake. And then, as I mentioned, we found this guy somewhere on the street. He was really good with CRMA and queries and stuff. And so he kind of combined some of those data sets into a bunch of consolidated views that, by the way, have taken on a life of their own, because they're not only used by us to ingest back into Salesforce and CRM analytics to view data with different lenses and slice and dice it and really drive business decisions in the platform. But that same data set is also then plugged into other business groups, right? That pipe that into Tableau or pipe that into machine learning algorithms, right? And so we've created a central place or a source of truth for data that combines different data sets, but ultimately everyone was looking at the same one, maybe with a slightly different lens. This way you're getting the same results. And that has been really, really powerful for our organization and a pattern we're trying to maintain and continue.
Awesome. You said what do you use for replication? You said.
So we use a couple of things. CopyStorm, right, is what we use. We use a couple of things. We have CopyStorm and Own Backup as well, just purchased by Salesforce, hoping to maybe consolidate a little bit on that as well. So we have a couple of different things for Salesforce. For other services, there is a zero copy solution to Snowflake. Data Cloud offers one as well, and something we explored. We were a little early with Data Cloud with Salesforce, and so when we bought it, the zero copy wasn't quite there, at least not the real-time version of it. And that's a whole nother topic for another time. But we ultimately did not go that way, although that is an option now. And so we do still use CopyStorm, which is pretty cost effective to replicate our data. I think it's at like a 5-minute delay or something like that, and gets over into Snowflake for us to play around with.
Okay, and in terms of reporting platforms, I know you said CRMA. Any others?
Tableau. Yeah, so we have Power BI too, but that's going away. And so we're really consolidating around Tableau and CRM analytics.
Okay, awesome. How do you feel about the two of those? Any preferences, one over the other? Why? Compare and contrast? Because that's one of the most common questions when it comes to Salesforce analytics.
Yeah, let me give you my honest answer to that. And so hopefully no Salesforce AE is watching this. It's a little confusing, right? Because you have Tableau and you have CRM analytics, and they can kind of sort of do the same thing. Now, historically, Tableau did not play great with Salesforce. Didn't embed well. It was a little bit wonky and junky, right? When you kind of plugged it in there. That's not really the case anymore. Now, CRM analytics lets you do some really cool things in the platform, like doing creating alerts and then having those alerts do stuff in the platform that drives certain behaviors. We're not actually using any of that stuff, right? Like, it sounds good. We haven't really practically applied any of it. And so we're really starting to ask the question of well, do we need both? Can we just maybe consolidate in Tableau and just sort of embed that back into Salesforce? What's great is how we approach this project by creating those views. And so if we did want to do, and we kept our CRM analytics views essentially dumb, right? They're not doing anything. They're just displaying the data from those views. So if in the future, we do want to switch to a tool like Tableau and embed it back into Salesforce, we didn't really lose any of the work and logic we created. We can really replicate it fairly easily. In fact, I think we've done this for some data sets, right, already. And so, yeah, I mean, what I would tell your listeners between the two is, CRM analytics is the better analytics tool if you want to go all in on the platform. It has some really cool features that Tableau doesn't. We just haven't used it. My hunch is we're not the only ones. And so it should be something to think about when deciding between the two and figuring out where to make the best investment.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is CRMA looks more Salesforce-y, but that's changing in a big way, I think. Yeah.
So in terms of a couple of quick questions on the Service Cloud project before we kind of leave the Service Cloud project aside for a moment. Overall, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being fantastic. Looking at the full picture end to end, Nilam, how would you rate it in terms of success for the business?
I mean, speaking with a biased answer here, I'd probably say 8 or 9, because I do think there's always room for improvement. I do think it is successful because we have clear visibility into the data now. we have an understanding of where our issues lie, where customers need more help. And it also, I mean, we're able to make decisions based off the data now. We're able to make decisions based off of alignment for resources. Where do we need to move our resources if we need to do some realignment with them? Data-driven decision-making is a big thing these days, and in general, and whatever market or area that you work in, that's like a big thing. If you don't have data and you can't make a decision, at least a cognitive decision to understand what you want to do next.
Mm-hmm. Andy, in terms of, you know, if you had to redo this project all over again, what would be the one bit of info that you wish you knew sat here 2.5 years later at the start?
Yeah, you know, so this was probably one of the toughest decisions, and I still think about if it was the right one. Should we have gone with a new org? Should we have just gone with a fresh org as opposed to transforming our existing org? At the time, it didn't make sense to do that because our org was so intertwined with the rest of our organization, and we could probably spend another hour talking about it, that if we did that, you'd almost have to rebuild all this legacy tech debt just in this new org. And yes, you might have a fresh start in some places, but you'd still be so intertwined with other places. But then at the same time, like, we have like objects that have hit their field limits because we've had it for so long. And you kind of have these like, you know, wonky issues that, you know, just an old org brings about. And so that was probably like the one thing I still think about. I think we made the right decision. But I still question it to this day if it was, you know, definitely the right one.
Okay. Nilam, in terms of, I guess, advice to other engineering leaders, similar backgrounds to yourself, that going through a Service Cloud project, what would that be?
Don't be scared. Just start with the foundations. If you've got a custom org and there's a lot of customizations you've done to it that was not foundational to what Salesforce offers, I highly encourage pulling the plug and taking 3 steps back just to start over, because the return on your investment for doing it the right way far outweighs what you're going to do maintaining the custom code that you've already built.
Was there ever a moment during the couple of years where you thought, I wish we didn't bother at all?
No, I was super excited about tearing it down. Probably far more excited than Andy was, I think, at the time. He probably thought I was crazy. But I was all in on what we were doing. I firmly believed in it. You have to believe in what you're working on. You have to be excited about it. It's the only way you can get buy-in and get champions on the business and operations side of the world. And so no, I didn't have any doubts that we should not do this.
Good. Andy, I'll ask you one last quick question, and then we're going to pivot from Service Cloud. Any light bulb moments during the project where you were like, okay, obviously your perspective on the business and how they use the Salesforce and Service Cloud doesn't predate obviously Nilam's, who was there almost from the get-go. So any coming in to a different organization, in-house versus consulting, which we're going to cover in a second. Any light bulb moments for you along the way, and specifically what was it when you're like, okay, they get it now?
Oh,
and I don't mean that like in a negative, like, oh, the skill set that let me backtrack. I don't mean it like in a negative way, like, oh, you know, it's not like consulting, they don't get it kind of thing. I mean, where maybe you were getting a bit of friction, and then it was like, oh, you see, like, this is why the pain was worth it kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to answer your exact question, but maybe I'll answer the question I wish you asked me, which is, I think the big thing was like understanding the journey that like our customers and people experience and thinking about the problem from a story perspective, right? I think maybe before we were like, people would ask us for stuff and we would just do it, and we didn't have the big picture in mind when we were doing things. And that's how you ended up with this like spaghetti web of solutions. And, you know, one thing I thought Nilam did a fantastic job at the beginning of this project is taking a step back and just mapping out the world and then using that as to drive the rest of it. And so I don't think we did that for projects generally. We just kind of worked in little chunks. We were agile, and agile is great, but it's a really dangerous word, especially in the world of Salesforce with cloud platforms, because sometimes you need to be a little bit more intentional. You want to be flexible, but you also want to be intentional. And to be intentional, you really need to take a step back and see the forest and not just the trees. And I think using that lens to solve the Service Cloud project problem is also something we've used for other problems thereafter. And I think it's been really helpful just in terms of like how we engage with the business, how we build trust, how we make sure we're talking the same language, how we make sure the outcome is going to be aligned with their expectations, right? Even so much simple things like just draw some wireframes out of what you want that future state to look like. And so I thought everyone really did a good job kind of taking some of those things that you learn in consulting, right? That's like pretty basic stuff that you do in like the consulting world that I think we brought here and applied it. And I think made a really big difference to making sure we were just aligned with the stakeholders and the outcomes.
Good. Okay. So quick questions on career choices at a high level. Andy, we just mentioned, obviously, you were with an SI for quite a long time before moving to Ren. It must be a question I get asked all the time. Especially back end of last year. A lot of people that been with an SI for anywhere between 5 and 15 years of their career, kind of had enough for whatever reason. Some have transitioned well into end users, others hate it. What would be your general advice to someone who's like maybe weighing up whether they should make that move or not? Like, don't bother if you like XYZ. You should do it if you like 1, 2, 3 reasons. I don't know.
Yeah. So one of my favorite sayings, I hope I can say this on a podcast, is the grass is always greener, but dogs poop on both sides, right? And so that's true here. I think if you're going to get into tech, starting at an SI or consulting firm is where you want to start. You want to get that broad lens. You want to see a bunch of different implementations. You want to learn like structure and project management, some soft skills, like how do you approach a project, right? But being an SI side, one thing I could definitely relate to is like it's like a really transient role. You kind of hop on a project. Some are successful, some are not. You move along. You never really get to see everything fully through. And then when you're on the other side of the lens, like the other side of the field, you really get to own it, get to experience it end to end. But you deal with a whole different set of challenges and problems, right? That you get to kind of shield yourself from as an SI. And so my advice to people is start off your career with an SI, especially if you're young coming out of college. Go work, like I tell this to my nephews, go work for a consulting company. Like go work there for a couple of years, and then you can go in-house and you'll have like this full briefcase of tools that you'll be able to apply to solve different problems. But being at an SI forever also kind of, has its downsides, right? You don't really get to have the full weight of responsibility of a business depending on what you're doing. People are just another customer, and whether it's a success or not, you kind of move along down your career path anyways. And so there's a certain amount of satisfaction to be on the other side and see things through and really see the impact on the business and work with a broader group and be able to fully commit yourself to whatever it is you're doing. And so start at an SI. When you think you're ready, make the switch, and then you can figure out what you like more later on.
I think you point around the staying at an SI can also be a negative effect for too long, right? Because I think especially as you work your way up towards the top, right? In those kind of like application architect roles, enterprise architect roles, managing teams, and so on. Did you go deep enough in one business to truly understand how different ERPs implement with, and play with CRMs, right? It's very much kind of fixed project, move on, timeline, etc. So, like you said, you're scraping the surface with an SI often versus becoming as technical as you probably could be with an end customer in house. So, would you agree?
Yeah, and it's something I actually admire a lot about Nilam, like her level of depth of understanding of Rent and its business and the nuances and our clients and the different end users and systems. Like that is like a life experience of its own, being in this space, servicing PMCs and everything that goes along with it. Like that is an education that you just can't get without being in this industry. And so having had that experience, there are other folks within our industry that you can migrate to and apply that knowledge in different ways, or even ancillary industries that have similarities. And so it's a very different core set of skills you develop by being inside of the company and understanding the business, as opposed to just being a technologist that's trying to apply different frameworks and solve problems based on your own experience.
Nilam, I'm going to pivot quickly to you. Maz, you had a question, sorry?
Yeah. This is one that I think about a lot because I've been almost my whole career in consulting as well, is the definition of success when you're internal. Yeah, why don't you talk about that, right? Because when you're in the consulting side, it's often, did we get a renewal contract? That's how I define success. Yeah, so internal, right? It's much longer. It's a longer game, I guess.
It's a longer game, different game, different score. Different stakeholders. I mean, that's the thing too, right? Like your stakeholders, your executives, they change, and like you might think you're winning, but then you get a new player on the field that has a different perspective, and maybe you're not, through no fault of your own even, right? And so definitely you get those different challenges being in-house as well, if that makes sense. Your definition of, you're never done. Like there's always something to do internally. Your SAO is never done, and your renewal is perpetual until it's not.
Nilam, your, I don't know how to describe it, status in tech is very unusual, I guess, in a sense that, you stayed with the company for a very long time, and I'm sure your phone must have been ringing off the hook during, all that time, but especially, 2021, 2022, when the market was booming. But you made the decision to stay. You've worked your way up from being an individual contributor as a QA to 14 years leading a team, and we all know you're awesome at your job. Andy talks very highly of you as well throughout the podcast. So we do see a lot of people that do chase that extra 10% elsewhere on salary, right? And then 12 months later, they're back on the job market. It was a short-term decision. They haven't built up the tenure and loyalty with that company as much. What would you say the biggest benefit of sticking around has been for you and your career specifically?
Yes, I've been with the company for many years, and I think a couple things that keep me around. There's motivation. There's endless opportunities. The minute I feel bored, or I just don't feel like I'm doing what I love anymore, I have a conversation with my direct manager, and I tell that person very openly, very candidly, like, I'm bored. This is not fun anymore for me as an individual contributor. And then we work our way through finding the right things for me to work on, or we change direction, or we find initiatives that I can focus my energy around that would make it fun and challenging. But I enjoy the people that I work with day in and day out. There are always ups and downs. Every day is not always going to be a perfect day. But I also get what I'm looking for in my professional and personal side is I like my work-life balance. There are days that we'll be online for more than 8 hours a day, and that's okay, because then I know if I need to step away for an hour later on, nobody's going to question it. Nobody has a concern of me missing an hour on a normal workday because I am doing my job. There's a lot of respect and trust that goes along the way, not just with not with my direct manager, but all the folks that I work with day in and day out, as well as even my own team, the folks that I work with daily to getting things done. There's a lot of contributing factors of me staying with the company for so long. If you would have asked me when I was in my, early 20s, which I still am in my mind, I probably would have jumped ship after 3 years, which I think that's what most people that come out of college do. They go for a couple of years and they jump ship, go somewhere else. I don't chase the 10K more. I chase a balance. In challenges.
Would you say the reason you're so motivated by the role is because you've you know the business inside out. You've been a part of its growth, and you care fundamentally. Would someone care as much about a company if they've only been there 2 years? Probably not. But being there 14 years, I mean, without it being cliche, we don't not nothing's a family, but like these are people that you spend some serious amount of time with. You care about them, their success. You care about the business because you've been a big part of that. Would you say that's keeps you motivated because there's that personal attachment a bit more?
I would agree with that. I would say that there is a little bit of a personal attachment. There are things that I know I've done or I've worked with my team on or my team has done, and we see the outcome of that today. I've seen people go through many phases of their journey at the company as well, just like I have. I enjoy elevating other folks on our team. I encourage them to want to do better. Obviously, they want to go outside of the scope of what they do today. Wonderful. Let's talk about what they want to do tomorrow. I enjoy the coaching and the skilling up folks. I think I just set a different bar for most people. I set a different bar for myself. And it's usually a high bar. Sometimes I probably set the bar too high, but that's okay. And I probably set the bar high for my team, and that's okay as well. They'll tell me to get grounded a little bit. But they're up for the challenge.
Good. They have to be. They're not allowed otherwise. So last question to wrap up today's recording. Agentforce, is that something that's on the roadmap for the business going into more of 2025, Andy?
It's a very timely question. We're literally looking at it like as we speak now. We have some use cases for it. There's also some competing technologies outside of Salesforce that our company is looking at where Agentforce would probably be a really good fit. And so the short answer is yes. I think it's a great product, right? That's the future. Is Agentforce the right product for us to get it there? TBD. I think it goes back a little bit to what I said earlier, which is like it's not a service platform, but it's all part of the same thing. So maybe the answer is simply yes for that reason. But we're looking at it. We're looking forward to leveraging it, doing a POC on it in the near term, and hopefully getting value out of it.
Awesome. So watch this space. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you, Andy and Nilam, for giving us your time today and sharing your story. A bit of a unique first for us on the CRM Success Show. It's our first episode where we've had two guests. So thank you for bearing with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
For our listeners, please do not forget to subscribe to the CRM Success Show for more episodes featuring amazing leaders who are shaping the future of CRM. You can follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube for latest updates and exclusive content. Thank you.